mission.
Throughout its history, the NASA Space Shuttle program revolutionized space travel. While by today's standards, they're considered somewhat out of date, they were the first partially reusable launch system to reach orbit, and participated in projects like the construction of the International Space Station and the deployment of the Hubble Space Telescope. In total, the fleet of shuttles operated for 1,322 days, 19 hours, 21 minutes, and 23 seconds. Over the course of its 135 missions, only 2 incidents occurred that resulted in astronaut deaths. The first was the 1986 flight of the Shuttle Challenger, which broke apart during its launch. The second occurred in 2003, when the 28th flight of the Shuttle Columbia attempted re-entry. Today, I'd like to explain that second disaster, what happened, and why. STS-107 launched on January 16, 2003. 81 seconds into its flight, a large piece of its left bipod foam ramp broke off, striking the left wing of the orbiter. At the time, the shuttle was at an altitude of around 20 kilometers and traveling at a speed of roughly Mach 2.46. This speed caused the foam to create a 15 to 25 centimeter diameter hole in the craft. This wasn't the first time these foam ramps had been observed falling off of a shuttle. The Challenger and Atlantis experienced it, as did Columbia itself, on 2 separate flights. In fact, Columbia's second incident was the first one to be observed for further investigation. The foam in that case struck an attach ring on the left solid rocket booster, creating a 10 centimeter wide dent. NASA officials had then concluded that foam shedding would cause no more significant damages. I am certain that they now all firmly regret this decision. It led to a gigantic debate about NASA's competence in determining the safety of their astronauts during more dangerous missions. One official remembered Director of Missions Operations John C. Harpold sharing a disturbing statement that was a sentiment shared by many at the time, including other astronauts. "You know, there is nothing we can do about damage to the thermal protection system. If it had been damaged, it's probably better not to know. I think the crew would rather not know. Don't you think it would be better for them to have a happy, successful flight and die unexpectedly during entry than to stay on orbit knowing that there was nothing to be done until the air ran out?" Damage prediction software was used to run the possibilities while Columbia was docked to the ISS, officials pulling their hair out wondering what to do. On January 23rd, Flight Director Steve Stitch sent an email to the shuttle, informing Commander Hudson and Pilot McCool of the foam strike. However, the email dismissed any concerns about safety, stating, quote, "Experts have reviewed the high-speed photography and there is no concern for RCC or tile damage. We have seen this same phenomenon on several other flights and there is absolutely no concern for entry." Columbia was scheduled to land on February 1st at 08:16 Eastern Standard Time. The following is a timeline of her descent. At 0800, Mission Control Center Entry Flight Director Leroy Kane asked the control room for a go-no-go response for a deorbit burn. Everything seemed nominal, and a go response was given from Capcom at 8:10. 15 minutes later, the deorbit began. Commander Hudson and Pilot McCool using Columbia's 2 Orbital Maneuvering Systems engines. At this time, the shuttle was oriented upside down and tail first, 282 kilometers over the Indian Ocean. Everything proceeded normally as the shuttle slowed down and reoriented itself for atmospheric re-entry. At 0844, entry interface occurred. This is the point at which the shuttle officially begins to re-enter Earth's atmosphere. She was now 120 kilometers in altitude, and the leading edge wing temperatures were reaching an estimated 1,370 degrees Celsius due to the heat of re-entry. At 0848, a system similar to a flight recorder logged a higher than usual temperature on the vehicle's left wing. However, this data was not reported to either ground or shuttle crew. 1 minute later, the shuttle executed a planned roll to its right at a speed of Mach 24.1 and an altitude of 74 kilometers. 0850, Columbia reaches a 10-minute period of peak heat stressing the vehicle to its limits. During this time, people on the ground begin to see it. As can be observed, something had clearly gone very wrong, as the vehicle was shedding a lot of debris. This continued from the coast of California all the way to Texas as the shuttle disintegrated. At 0859, the final broken message was heard from the crew, a response to an advisement to monitor their situation.
The tires feeling the heat pressure on left outboard and left inboard, both tires.
And Columbia, Houston, we see your tire pressure messages, and we did not copy your last.
Is it instrumentation, Max?
Flight Max, those are also off.
Roger.
A few seconds later, the master alarm would be going off as the vehicle lost hydraulic pressure. The shuttle would have begun to pitch about uncontrollably, and now the crew would be realizing the gravity of the situation. A minute later, the craft disintegrated completely over Dallas. The crew module remained intact during this process, though it lost pressure quickly enough to render the astronauts unconscious. It then broke apart, and the final fate of the crew was sealed.
Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
At 0812, Flight Director King called a contingency and alerted search and rescue teams to scour the debris areas. He called for the doors to mission control to be locked, and the assessment of the situation began.
GC flight. GC flight. Flight GC, lock the doors. Copy.
In the wake of the loss of Columbia and her crew, the shuttle program was, for the second time, suspended. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board was highly critical of NASA's decision-making and their risk analysis of the situation. They concluded that Atlantis, the next scheduled shuttle, could have been expedited in order to rescue Columbia's crew without sacrificing its own safety. A repair while in orbit may have also been possible, but was a high-risk option, and a rescue was considered the best option for the situation. In my opinion, the Columbia disaster was a combination of incompetence, poor design, and lack of care for astronaut safety. The Challenger disaster should have motivated NASA to eliminate any redundancy in the design of the shuttles, and the foam bipod ramps were a known redundancy. They had already been observed to be a potential problem, and nothing was done about it because of corporate-style risk analysis ratios. It reminds me of that scene in the film Fight Club, in which Edward Norton calmly explains that if the cost of a lawsuit due to a defective car is less than the cost of recalling the car,
we don't do one.
It feels cold and heartless to me. Because of that kind of mentality, 7 people lost their lives who didn't need to. Commander Rick D. Husband, who logged 235 hours in space. Pilot William McCool, 15 days, 22 hours, 20 minutes in space. Payload Commander Michael P. Anderson, 593 hours in space. Payload Specialist Elon Roman, first Israeli astronaut, 15 days, 22 hours, 20 minutes in space. Mission Specialist Kalpana Chawla, first Indian astronaut, 30 days, 14 hours, 54 minutes in space. Mission Specialist David Brown, 15 days, 22 hours, 20 minutes in space. Mission Specialist Laurel Clark, a captain in the U.S. Navy, 15 days, 22 hours, and 20 minutes in space. Sacrifices need to be made in the name of space exploration, of course, but we must make sure that they are always necessary, always unavoidable. Disasters like the Challenger and the Columbia were pivotal in the eventual loss of the shuttle program, and their spiritual successors must be better and must be safer, for all of our sake. Thank you all very much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe to my channel, which is Dead Kennedy in Space. As usual, my name is Kevin, and I'll see you over the curve, Space Cowboys.
To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish